Hello again, and welcome back to another episode of Scuttlebutt VR. It's going to be a very exciting one because we are recapping the events of the Meta Connect keynote, and there was a lot of big info in there. I know, Hermes, you didn't catch any of it, so I'm excited to just bombard you with crazy news and see what you think. As we were just discussing a second ago beforehand, I actually attended the keynote in VR through their Meta Horizons app. And it was pretty crazy. All of it felt like you were walking through a campus into a convention center, and then the transitions that they had on stage while they were talking about everything. I mean, I've got a clipboard, you can't see it, but I have a clipboard full of information to talk about here. And yeah, it was a really cool show, actually. So I guess without further ado, we can just jump into it, right?
Yeah.
So the first thing, and I would say the main overall arching theme of this presentation, was that Meta is focusing in on business now. They had already kind of done some business stuff with Workrooms, but they're doubling down on improving Workrooms, improving its functionality. They have a partnership with Zoom now. So they're going to make it so from Workrooms, you can join a Zoom call and vice versa. From Zoom, you can join a Workrooms meeting. So that's huge for productivity because not everyone uses Facebook stuff.
What is it like a avatar displaying on somebody's screen for Zoom, vice versa? You're seeing a screen that has their camera if they choose to have it on, or their avatar.
So if we
Workrooms.
So, as an example, in their idea, if somebody joined us, they would be like a little window, kind of like the camera is floating there, that we would see their face, just like you would see on a normal Zoom call. And for them, it would be what the camera is seeing, in a whole room full of people talking and interacting. They also talked about how they're planning on taking their Horizons app and expanding it beyond VR into PC and even on smartphones. So that will help a lot of people who aren't in VR interact in the same digital world. And so I'm curious, that might have some integration with Workrooms as well.
I wonder if it can do sort of like the Snapchat filter option kind of a thing, where maybe it's like hand tracking and face tracking kind of a thing, where maybe it simulates an avatar, or like you said, has that window-like option.
They talked about it a little bit.
Will develop.
You're jumping way ahead. We'll get to avatars, I promise. But for now, gaming was the next segment that we talked about. And we talked about their Horizon social app a little bit. They announced a few new games, including Iron Man VR, which I am super hyped about. It looks really fun. You get to just blast shit, I'm looking forward to living the dream there. And it's being developed by Sony, which is big because they're doing their own VR stuff. And so that's showing that, the studios are still kind of willing to play nice.
Mm-hmm.
They announced the release date for Among Us VR, which is going to be on the 10th, I think they said. No, it's past the 10th. Maybe the 20th. I'll put the date. I didn't really care. It wasn't that big a deal because the game that they didn't mention at all was Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. They mentioned it at last year's keynote, and nothing this year. Not a whisper, not a word, not even a picture. I was disappointed.
I mean, how many people other than yourself are waiting for Grand Theft Auto in VR?
Oh, so many, though, I feel like. That's everyone who has VR. I feel like that's one of the main things that they're waiting for, is that real kind of open-world experience that feels lived in.
The ability...
San Andreas is the first game to do that good.
The ability to beat up prostitutes and steal cars, and
with the purple dildo. That's the only weapon to use. That was my favorite part about San Andreas. I'm not ashamed to say it. They shared some interesting numbers, though. 1 in 3 VR games has made over $1 million.
Oh. Okay,
that was higher than I was expecting, honestly.
On all 3?
That Bone Lab game that just came out, we covered a little bit. They grossed $1 million in the first hour.
Okay.
And then they said I forget what the exact number is, but it's billions of dollars total have been spent on VR gaming in general. which I thought was really interesting, especially since they shouted out VRchat, where we are now. They talked about Rec Room and a couple other things, because social apps are far and away the most popular apps in the Quest ecosystem, which I thought was a really interesting statistic. Because, Mark Zuckerberg's been going on and on about how, it's about connection. It's about, conversation and feeling that sense of presence. And maybe you think that's bullshit, but most people who have VR headsets are playing social games where they do just that. So, maybe there's something there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's no coincidence and it's no accident that the guy who made his billions of dollars from his social website has, a little bit of a foot in the door and a head start when it comes to social media. And I use that loosely because right now everybody associates it with, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, smartphone things. But media, as it is developing, will include virtual reality as a form of media. So again, he's got quite the head start when it comes to social media, infrastructure. So,
well, in their heavily scripted keynote, where they were very obviously reading off a teleprompter most of it, they did make a couple good points towards that end. I remember he was talking about how computing, like all the big advances in computing, have been kind of focused around social, even if it's not on purpose. Like whether it's email, or just connecting with people on the internet, or like any time that we come up with a new technology, humans are immediately wondering how we can use it to socialize better.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so much, we've talked about this many times, it's so much more immersive. Like you get the added connection that you're missing in a lot of those other things, email, instant messaging, and social media. You're missing, I mean, each one I think has gotten a little better. And so I think it's just like that natural evolution of having this be the next step, and us being, early adopters to it can certainly attest to that being the case. It is true. You get that little extra bit of presence and a little extra bit of, information, whether it's visual or hopefully soon tactile information. So I'm curious, like what were things that we guessed right when it comes to the what is it, Quest Pro now? Is that what we're calling it?
I'm glad that you asked. That is what we're calling it. It was officially announced yesterday, to really not that much fanfare, because all of the leaks were completely right, and everything that people thought they knew about the Quest Pro, they totally knew about the Quest Pro. One thing that I did like to hear, we speculated on a previous episode, it does come with a light blocker that magnetically clips on. So it does have kind of an immersion mode, you could call it. But something to make it easier to do things like this, where you want to be completely focused in on the experience. But back to that focus on business, the Quest Pro is very much for professionals. Priced at $14.99.
Yeah, I did see that price. That was one thing that I didn't have to attend the event to see very quickly come out.
People
on
are
Twitter
freaking out.
We kind of called it, right? That was going to be up there in the price point, and I think we discussed like anything more than $5 needs to be really worth it. And
so
your opinion on?
I don't know if it's really worth it. It's really cool. I think for a certain set of people, they're going to find that it's worth it to them. Because it's very clear that they want you to just be using the Quest Pro instead of a laptop. That's why it's priced at that point. It has a ridiculous amount of performance. It does have the color pass-through cameras, and they have a huge push and focus on like augmented reality. So being able to see your desk and everything that's really there, but then you get 3 giant monitors that are actually connected to your computer, or maybe the Quest is just running it on its own. One thing that I saw that I thought you would really like is they made it so the controllers have there's a little stylus nub you can poke in the bottom now. So when you're writing on your desk, it feels much more like a pen and gives you that tactile feedback that you had been looking for. And the controllers are a whole new thing. They don't have the tracking rings, that the ones that we have do.
Yeah.
They have cameras. The controllers are basically just mini computers now. And so on their own, they can figure out where they are in 3 positional space in reference to your body and the headset. Where with the Quest 2
Okay.
that we're currently using, the headset is doing all of the tracking.
Okay. So it
Uh,
took some of that RAM and offloaded it to them.
Yeah, well, they gave it a lot more all the way around, because with all the different cameras and everything, because it does have the face and the eye tracking as well for even deeper sense of presence and communication. All of that just takes an insane amount more power. So it has a new chipset, it has more RAM in it, better cooling. It's going to be really interesting to see how the battery life is.
That's exactly what I was going to ask next. Did they say or specify some of the like physical specs, like battery life, like weight, etc. Like how did all of
It
that,
might be on their website. They
pan
didn't
out?
talk about it during the keynote at all. No, the presentation was just kind of like
Quest?
It definitely is. I mean, I've heard from a lot of people that it's lighter, and it just not only does it look like it's lighter because it's actually physically thinner in the front, but it has the battery on the back, so the weight balance is going to be a little bit better as well.
Is a little better.
You could tell it's something that they want people to be wearing long term. Like in their thing, they said, "Oh, comfort padding, special cushioning, like feels super duper sexy." One thing that we didn't call is that the pre-orders for them opened yesterday, and they're apparently going to start shipping October 25th.
Okay.
So people will have
get
these
them as early as
next month, basically.
Interesting.
There's some I've already watched a couple reviews from YouTubers who are a little bit cooler than us, so they've got their hands on one already. But yeah, I'm excited. It looks really cool. It looks like if you were a professional who has used the Quest or the Quest 2 in your workflow and found that it really is a huge benefit, the Quest Pro is just going to take that to the next level. Because they basically took everything that's great about the standalone Quest platform and like dialed it up to about 11. But they also didn't cut any of the costs like they did with the Quest 2. And so they're basically saying, this isn't for everyone. We're specifically making it for the people who are really going to get the value out of it. And it's interesting to see. I wonder how long it's going to be before it goes on sale. I'm guessing right after Christmas.
And I was going to say, what do you think the sale will be?
Oh, God. I mean...
$1,200? $1,250?
Yeah, I was going to say like 20% off. So yeah, $1,200.
Yeah.
But it comes, as far as I know, it comes with a charging dock too, because obviously the controllers take way more battery now. So it has a nice little dock that it sits in. So I don't know what Asterion is going to do. I really like their stand, but maybe they need to make one that's compatible with the Quest Pro.
Business opportunities, guys. That's all I say. Nothing but opportunities.
These segues just keep right on rolling, if I'm being honest, because while we're talking about things that are compatible with the Quest Pro and, just Meta's focus on business, they made probably one of the biggest partnerships in a tech space, in my opinion, right now. They have a full-blown partnership going with Microsoft.
Oh, shit. Okay.
This is hot on the heels after Google just invested $10 million into SideQuest, which is some software that you use to sideload apps onto your headset. So they're kind of trying to get in the back door. Well, Meta is going right to bed with Microsoft. And so that means that Office 365 and Windows 365 will be compatible and running on headsets. So if you work in Word, if you work in PowerPoint, exactly, it's huge. The Windows 365 is even bigger. You can run a streamed version of full Windows inside your headset.
Yeah,
so you can work on a Windows computer from anywhere. It doesn't have to be yours. You don't have to have a great internet connection on whatever computer you're streaming to. They handle all of that. And it's encrypted, obviously, for business.
That sounds great on paper. I know how Windows performs in real life, which is why I hate it so much. So I expect it to be lots of bugs and a lot of backdoors, encrypted or not. I can't wait to see the plethora of bullshit that comes out of all of their Windows compatibility, I'll say, or lack thereof.
Absolute shitstorm.
that's a little sidebar. Like, I'm really glad that we're taking these first steps, and that is going to be huge for business. But I also know what it's like being on the business end, even as the government is concerned, that uses a lot of Windows computers and a lot of Windows software, how fucking shit it is. But
well, yeah, they're still on like
I
XP
digress.
though,
No, they're no, they're not.
Microsoft is bringing
I wish
one
they
more
were.
important
They work
thing.
better.
Microsoft's bringing one more important thing to the Quest, and that's their Xcloud platform, their cloud streaming Xbox service. So theoretically, I could stream my Xbox One straight to my headset and play it like I had a giant TV. It doesn't let you play it in like virtual reality. It doesn't put you in the game. But I could see that being really handy for like if I was traveling. Instead of having to take a whole ass Xbox with me, now I just take my Xbox controller plus the headset I already bring with me everywhere. And I could sit in my hotel room or in the lobby at the airport. I could be sitting at the gate at the airport playing Xbox on a 50-inch TV.
And I see so what I'm getting is that they added a lot of compatibility to the headset.
There were a lot of
partnerships.
partnerships.
It works as a project. Yeah, well, as it works as a projector, right? Because like right now, the Quest really is more of the standalone. Like you can hook it to the computer, and it has some, like cross-platform availability, I guess, as it goes to what you might consider the app or its projection mode or whatever that is. Again, I've only used it maybe a handful of times, and by and large, it's not that useful, and it's really not that good. If I'm going to put it plainly, it's more of a standalone, headset. Piece of equipment that is specific to like the apps you can actually put on and use inside the headset. Whereas what I'm getting from this is there's a lot of other functionality that goes outside the headset, kind of like an offloading and an onloading, or like a collaboration that's going on with other devices, other companies, and I think that opens up the door to a lot of possibility of growth. That's kind of the sense I'm getting. They're kind of really clearly laying the foundation of what's going to happen in the next 5 years or so.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is smart.
Mark had a whole big speech about how, like, you can either believe in an open ecosystem, like kind of us and what Microsoft is doing, or you can believe in a closed ecosystem, which is like, what Apple does. Maybe one's better than the other. Who knows? Like, and he even said, he's like, in some generations, one approach has worked better than the other. But it's very clear that the main reason they're partnering with Microsoft is just to get as much ammunition against Apple as they can. Because Apple, they're not fucking around with gaming. They're making a productivity-focused headset. And if Meta wants to sell the Quest Pro for $1,500, they gotta really bring some sort of usefulness with this. And to be fair, nothing that they really announced, like, there's a web browser that's on Quest already. You could go to Office 365 on the web. You can sideload through that SideQuest app we were talking about that Google just invested in, the Xcloud app that's supposed to be for phones, and get it running on your Quest. So really, these partnerships they make it so you don't have to take backdoors anymore, which is something that a professional isn't willing to do. They want to just put it on or hand it to an employee and have it work. They don't want to have to fiddle and fuck and do a bunch of stuff. And so overall, I think it's a right move in that direction. The one thing that I'm curious about is they announced the Quest Pro, and then they said they're bringing all this Microsoft stuff to Quest. So does that mean the whole Quest platform, including the Quest 2? Or are you bringing these things specifically to the Quest Pro because that's a feature that could lure in potential buyers? And I think that's a really important thing to consider. I would have to think at least the gaming service should be coming to Quest 2.
I'm hesitant, but I'm actually open-minded. Well, I mean, it might be a good way for an ease of transition. If they have some of it come over to the Quest 2, and you realize how throttled the Quest 2 may be, then it may, again, ease you and push you into the direction of the Quest Pro. If that's something that you're like, damn it, if I only had this much more or that much better kind of a thing, that might
more
be a
resolution,
good way to push
or
you
like
in that
the
direction.
higher sensitivity of the controllers, like for doing CAD work. Like if you are, they said, I think New Balance and somebody, maybe Puma, are using the Quest 2s for shoe design currently. They use the Gravity Sketch app. And like, so yeah, I'm sure that those designers are going to immediately get the Quest Pros because it's better for everything that they're doing. But that's not the average consumer. And like, they're not, they know that. They're very aware of that. So it's really a gamble to see whether or not the corporate space is going to pick up. I don't think it's that big a gamble. I can't remember the name of the company, but they were some big like enterprise thing that like they're one of the world's largest global enterprise companies or something. They talked about how they shipped out 150,000 Quest 2s to new employees all over the world last year and have like the biggest corporate metaverse ever or something. And so it's like, you know, I mean, if that person's showing up on your keynote being like, yeah, we're really excited about the Quest Pro, like, you know, you're selling at least 150,000 units, right?
Yeah, and see, I think that's, again, the smart business strategy they're taking sort of from, like, the old school intro computer age, you know, like Jobs did when he was selling the fucking empty boxes or the Macintosh, and he was going after businesses like, look, you'll get the first 400, but you have to buy 350, or you have to put the cash up for 200 of them right now. Like, that's a smart
he did Kickstarter before it was cool,
strategy.
basically.
Sure, but I think the more important part that I think goes into it being more of a gamble, in my opinion. Now, it's less so now because we have technology strides and we have come to a point in technology that that I think you can get away with a little bit more of this through software updates and whatnot, because the hardware is mostly there. One thing that I do think is going to be the gamble is how well it actually performs. And again, why I brought up like Microsoft being buggy and everything is if one of a big, as you pointed out, potential selling point for consumers, and more importantly for the corporate entities that will be investing in this long term over the next 5 years, is performance of these apps, the software, of this compatibility, of all of these things. And if you have an initial investment and partnership of, let's say, you know, $10 billion over the next 5 years across all these companies, that's a nice round number that's probably feasible for Meta. It's probably 5 times that, who knows, but nice $10 billion, but it performs at a $1 billion mark. That $10 billion, I don't know if that's like going to be the gamble that all the companies are going to continue to make. Unlike Facebook or Meta now, unlike that company, other companies may not have that amount that they're willing to continuously invest over the next 10 years, because it may take 10 years instead of 5. And it certainly isn't going to entice other companies outside of what they've currently collaborated and partnered with to then take stock in it and then start gambling with it as well. I think right now it is still in that very, very early risky point. I think Meta, again, did smart by investing all of these billions of dollars and losing it initially so that they could get the platform up, they could get the hardware up to where it is, to where now Microsoft and, you know, Puma or whoever these other companies are that start to invest in it, help it raise up. But if it continues to like fizzle and underperform and sort of plateau at all of these like incremental stages, I don't doubt that it eventually will get to where everybody wishes and hopes it will be. But I don't know if all the other companies are going to be willing to continue propping it up for 5 years. Like, we've seen lots of companies get really big, really fast, really popular, really fast. A lot of people invested in fucking NFTs even went through this bubble, and then boom. Even if the technology is sound like an NFT, there's still plenty of bubbles that can be popped. And I do think it's kind of that gamble with this headset stuff.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. And that's it. Very much at this point has been like, oh, we have to put the money forward now to make it back later. And I think that's a really hard thing, not only to do when you're running a company, but like these guys have huge like boards of directors and investors to answer to and stuff. Like, it's not just, oh, I think it's a good idea, so I did it. There's a lot more people you have to get on board before you can get away with that. And so, yeah, there's not many companies. I think that's one of the reasons, like, for example, Microsoft is happy to get on board with Meta, is because they're like, yeah, this way we could be a part of it. And if it works out, you know, we're kind of just here as a part of it. But if it doesn't, we didn't invest anywhere near as much as we did with, like, the HoloLens, which they've dropped now. And, like, they decided VR doesn't work for them. but we're happy to, we'll contribute to somebody else's project, I guess, if it can help us on the later down the road, which is good. As long as that one person is there to keep forging forward, I think that'll keep working.
On the side of technology, because that's one thing that always I'm still very curious about as it relates to so many things that I'm personally invested in when it comes to digital art specifically, and now virtual art and augmented art. One thing that I'm curious how, and if, I mean, this is always a possibility that I'm sure Zuckerberg and all these other VR companies pushing forward are aware of, but it's I wonder what the current hardware is that Meta's offering that will keep it ahead of the game. Apple does a decent enough job marketing it as such to where the ecosystem and all the other perks, I guess you could say, if you're into that, make up for some of the lacking bits of technology, the customization, things like that you don't get with Apple that you might get with other things, versus again, the ecosystem, the privacy aspect, so on and so forth, that you do get with Apple. I wonder what the technology is that Meta is offering that's going to be able to entice people like myself to do it, and B, how they're going to stave off the next Meta or the next VR headset from doing just that little bit extra better, a full bodysuit or a full headset suit that has better hand tracking, better cameras, or implements a better software chip system, from head to toe, communication, collaboration of the full technology. That could be a Kickstarter that launches, next year, that kicks the shit out of Meta, and they've just invested billions of dollars, and they're now one step behind the curve. You know what I'm saying? So I'm sure they anticipate that, but what was in this, or did they say what was in this latest Quest Pro that looks like it's going to keep them ahead? Was there anything that was oh my God, this is revolutionary, that's going to keep them ahead of the game?
Well, I mean, the controller tracking is definitely a first. Nobody else, whether they're using Lighthouse outside-in tracking or infrared inside-out tracking, are able to track on that level and amount of persistence as the controllers. So I'd say that's the big thing that sets the Quest Pro apart. More than that, though, I think just
you
diversity.
Have to hold them, though?
Yeah, I mean, you do have to hold them. Yeah, they're roughly the same shape as the Quest 2 controllers, but just without the ring on top.
So then, let me ask you this then. I know PlayStation had a little, virtual reality, three-dimensional controller.
Their shitty wand.
Xbox had the full body. Yeah. The Xbox had the full body tracking camera, so it would be a 3D representation. Yeah, which
people still use those Kinect
body.
cameras for VR. You can hook them up to your PC.
That's what it was, Kinect.
Yeah.
Well, see, so then if we all have little bits of this, what's to stop the next? I mean, maybe it's some crazy thing that hasn't, which is why it hasn't happened yet. Maybe it's.
So to answer your question simply, it's the reason that Meta is getting in trouble with the FCC for potentially being a monopoly. Is because whenever they see some really cool technology or a game studio that's doing really well, like you said, that Kickstarter comes along, guess who's going to be the biggest funder? The guy who already spent $10 billion in this. And
sure.
So you see a lot of these people who are their goal isn't to beat Meta. Their goal is just to see their dream come to life. And now they have infinite resources beyond their wildest dreams. So it's kind of like a no-brainer. You have to kind of have something against them. You have to have a reason to not want to work with them specifically, which I think is why they're worried about Apple, because obviously Apple wants nothing to do with them. And then I think that's also why Google is investing in side companies that have access to the Quest platform instead of just investing directly, is because Google also doesn't want their line to be controlled by Meta, if that makes sense.
They want to undercut.
They want as much control as possible over their investment. But I think, like I said, diversification is the main thing. So they have the Quest Pro, and that's great, but they're going to keep making the regular Quest line. I don't know if they're going to call it something else, but basically they're more consumer level, gaming focused. They're budget brand of headsets, basically. And then they're working to bring as much of their quote-unquote metaverse outside of VR as possible. So they have Horizons that's going to be available on PC and smartphones eventually. You were talking about the avatars. They're working on kind of like how Apple or Snapchat does with the filters, but where it can use your Facebook avatar instead and has face tracking. And so they said it's kind of like the middle ground between video off and video on. So you can have video off, but people can still kind of see your expressions and that you're talking. And so he was like billing it, it's like, oh, this is kind of like a new way to talk to people, basically, where you can still have this face-to-face connection, but maybe not worry about like, oh, I'm on the bus right now, or where, have some degree of anonymity. They're retooling all of the avatars. So Mark Zuckerberg himself came out on the digital stage and, greeted everybody and showed off what their new avatars of the future are going to look like eventually. They have legs, so that's a big step forward. It obviously wasn't really like Mark himself. It was just a pre-recorded whatever digital animation, but it was really cool because it went from like, oh, the keynote's on a screen where we're watching somebody talk, and then you see somebody, like very Steve Jobs-esque walk out from underneath the screen and like start talking to everybody in a more face-to-face manner. That, the whole thing existed in VR, but it felt more personal when the avatar was on stage. I'll say that for sure. But they talked a little bit about legs and how they haven't had them because they're so hard to track. All the joints. He kind of rehashed what he said on the Joe Rogan podcast a little bit. But then he talked about how, legs are coming and they're going to be great. And like, you need algorithms and AI to be able to track them for when it loses tracking and this and that, which it sounds like maybe the Quest Pro will be able to use its controllers to do full body tracking. Like maybe those cameras can also keep track of where your legs are in a way that the headset couldn't, which that would be huge. It would be the first and only for a long time, I think, standalone headset with full body tracking built in. Because right now, to do full body tracking, a lot of people in VRchat know already, you have to have the lighthouse tracking. So you have to have at least 3 things around your room. And then there are trackers. You put 1 on each foot, 1 on your waist, then the headset and the controllers. That would be the base minimum for a full body tracking setup. And all of that only works connected to a PC.
I wonder how they're going to accomplish it then. Maybe it's just one additional piece, like that sits on a shelf or something, along with controllers.
And relevant to what we were talking about, he said, oh, we're working on it, but we want to wait, we're going to keep it to ourselves and keep it in Horizons. And like, we want to wait until the software stack improves and is perfect, which kind of like what we were talking about. They're like, we want to keep it because this is an advantage that we have. We know that this is a thing no one else can do right now. So that's why it only works on our apps.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
And they also talked about for making those avatars. Right now, they had like an AI that just took a bunch of pictures, and it took like days to actually generate into this. Like, it was a very photorealistic looking avatar. But now I guess they were talking about how they can potentially do it with phones in a matter of hours. You just use your phone and take like a bunch of selfie cam footage with a video, make some faces into the camera, and then a couple hours later, they showed off apparently what one of them looks like. And it's like, damn, it's a photorealistic face with expressions and everything. Like, it clearly wasn't as good as their other one, but the idea of, you can take yourself and put yourself in VR. And it's better. It's way better than this avatar that I made. Like, worlds apart. And it takes way less effort. You don't need any technical skill.
This opens the conversation up to so many of the privacy things we've talked about in the past. I do think that's going to be the next. This is going to be part 2 of this episode, because I mean we're saying all of the positives right now, and we're looking at a lot of the potential opportunities, etc. I'm very curious because that's where my brain is going right now. I'm very curious where the privacy conversation is going to go with all of this. Where all this, I mean, we've already seen Facebook, Meta, sell a lot of our data, sell a lot of our information to, anybody who wants to pay for it, along with, they're not the only company doing it either, but it's like, where is all of this information going to go from Meta taking facial recognition, software and information, full body information, location information. This is one step less than paranoid 1984 kind of hysteria. Now,
I'm gonna be
I
honest
don't
with
know.
you.
Is that the world we're in? Is that the world
Yeah,
we'll just have to
we
accept?
should have seen it coming. It's called Facebook. The man wants to get a realistic scan of all of our faces and put them in his book. That's it. It's always been his goal. He's never hidden it. He's been very plain about it, and we are almost reaching completion.
And we're just doing it for him. He doesn't even barely have to do anything to get it. We're just doing it for him. Now we're taking the pictures ourselves and giving it to him that way.
But it's not just people's faces too. They ended the presentation with some tech demos and kind of stuff that they're like, this is what we're working on. This is very much in the future. Like they had no dates on when anyone should expect any of this. It's all very much like experimental stuff with Carnegie Mellon. But they were doing
retinal scans. No,
it's a good guess though. No, I mean the Quest Pro has eye tracking, so it's almost retinal scanning. It's kind of right there. But they were doing they were doing a lot of 3D scanning of objects, so it's not just your face you could bring into the metaverse. You could bring any object conceivably, and having a streamlined process for that, which I think is cool. They were talking about 3D mapping of entire physical spaces. Like I guess with Carnegie Mellon, they 3D mapped the Pittsburgh airport, I think it was, or maybe it was Philadelphia. But yeah, and made like this whole thing for blind people, so it could tell you like, oh, there's a ramp in 30 feet, like, oh, you're right next to the donut shop on your left. Like it was like navigation, but it doesn't require satellites or networking at all.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, that their goal is just we're getting closer to the Matrix. They talked about neural links even.
100%.
That Meta's working on it.
Do you think that the Neuralink like clip will have a little adapter for the Quest Pro or Quest Pro X?
So,
10
they made it pretty clear
whatever.
that right now they're not trying to embed anything in anybody. Their Neuralink was a fucking bracelet. And they're like, look, we can when you see the neurons firing in your hand, we can program it. Oh, that's true. If anyone will, it will be Mark.
Physically yet. Oh God. Yeah, we are right there. We are 2 steps away from Matrix. We're 2 steps away from cyborgs and 3 steps away from full-on Matrix of integration, full soul, mind, consciousness. I don't even know what step 4 is going to be. It's just damn, dear Lord.
That's it. You give up the physical body entirely. You just put your soul into the machine.
That's it. The ghost in the machine, Jesus Christ. What are we doing?
Well, I honestly, I think that kind of wraps up. That was most of the high points of what they talked about. I did skip a couple of things just because I didn't think they mattered that much, to be frankly honest. So if I didn't mention something that you thought was really cool, definitely put it down in the comments, and we'll maybe address it in the part 2 of this video, where we get a little bit more in depth. And, we talk about whatever is going on right there. But we also talk about kind of what we think the Quest Pro and the direction of Meta means for the future of virtual reality. Because whether or not they want to own the metaverse, it actually belongs to all of us. Thank you so much for watching Scuttlebutt VR. And, you could feel free to leave a like and a sub if you wanted to maybe get a Quest Pro. We don't have one to give you, but Christmas is coming. You never know.
Get us to that 100,000 subscriber mark, and you know what? We'll be the first ones to send out the Quest Pro. How about that?
100,000 subscribers forever, Morty.
Forever.